Good evening, everybody. We left off on page 398, and this will be the last reading of Either Or. 2 weeks later. Now pull that rope. Go ahead, pull. Pull, pull, pull. You've got it. Good job. Now tie it around the quick lock. 2 wraps. Pull it tight. There you go. Now come over here. I want to quiz you on the sailing terms. What's the big sheet? The mainsail, Patrick yelled. Good job, Connor said, and patted him on the shoulder. The little thing you just switched from one side to the other, in front of the mainsail? The jib, Patrick jumped in before Aiden could say anything. That's right, and this one's just for Aiden, Connor said. What's the pulley that moves back and forth right there? He pointed. The traveler, the little boy yelled. Good job! Now look up there. Do you see those little strings hanging from the mainsail? Do you see how they're flying with the wind? You want them to do that. They're called telltales, and they tell you if you've got the right angle on the mainsail. If you don't, you can let it out or pull it in. The boys looked up in fascination, watching the mainsail. How are you doing, Kerry? Connor asked from his chair, which was situated on the aft deck of the 50-foot sailboat they had rented. His leg was propped up on the attachment on the hover chair, and he was slightly reclined in a green windbreaker. Sunglasses shielded his eyes from the sun. That was a good tack, she said. We're traveling at a nice, smooth 15 knots. Great, Connor said cheerfully. Thankfully, his head bandage was replaced with a liquid one to give him more freedom. He would return to rehab in Chicago in a few weeks, when his ribs and other injuries were healed enough for him to support himself on crutches for a time. For now, he was mostly free to relax, but he was also attending a rehab facility located on Hilton Head. They cruised away from Hilton Head Island, the October breeze not nearly as cold as it was in Chicago. The weather was quite agreeable. There were still torrential downpours in Chicago, contrary to weather reports' predictions. But it didn't matter. It wasn't raining in Hilton Head. When can Quigley swim? Aiden asked, the breeze pinning his light blue windbreaker to his chest. His sunglasses, too big for his face, slid down his nose again, and he pushed them up. I don't think Quigley should swim this far out, buddy, Connor told him, glancing down at the rambunctious dog as he chased a tennis ball around the deck, then followed it down below in the cabin. Maybe we'll see if he wants to swim by the shore, but someone's going to have to go in with him. I'll go, Aiden and Patrick both said. We'll get your suits on tomorrow and you can both go, Kerry said with a smile. She looked up, seeing the police helicopter hover in front of their location, and stuck her radio in her ear. We're good to go. No problems as of now. We'll keep our distance. Thank you, ma'am, and sorry to bother you. Over, came the reply. Kerry popped the radio out of her ear and turned back to the helm. She really just wanted to get away from it all, but at the moment she'd settle for this. There were some things that couldn't be avoided. One such thing was having Connor talk with Amber. She had hated to ask him to relive it, especially now, but with the U.S. Marshals moving the child to another city so soon, she had little time for Connor to make a difference. Kerry was hoping that hearing Connor's success story and having that possibility planted in the back of her mind would help her overcome her abuse and what was bound to be a difficult life in foster care from this point forward. Another unavoidable situation was Tejada. The terrorist had been captured in LaGuardia International Airport by FBI agents, and Kerry was forced to attend an interagency law enforcement conference in Washington, D.C. the previous week, regarding how a situation like that could be caught sooner in the future. After these and other tasks were complete, the family took off for Hilton Head Island for a 2-week getaway. Neil and her parents were handling things at home and taking care of the house until the O'Malleys got back. The first thing they had done when they arrived by commercial flight was eat dinner at the Salty Dog Cafe. Then they checked into their condo and went to the beach the next morning before deciding to spend the afternoon sailing. The kids were having a great time. They had loved everything they had seen so far. They wore their Salty Dog Cafe t-shirts with pride. Kerry, stop daydreaming, put the thing on autopilot and come over here, Connor instructed playfully, a broad smile on his face. Aiden and Patrick leaned over the boat, looking into the wake behind them. Kerry obeyed readily, and let the computer decide when to tack, as she stepped on deck and sat in a reclining chair next to Connor. Quigley ran up and down the deck with a tennis ball, but then lost it in the cabin below once more. Connor chuckled and said to the kids, "Go down and take that away from him. Give him a bone instead." Once they were gone, Connor smiled at his wife. He put his arm around the back of her chair, ignoring the small protest in his ribs. She sighed in contentment and smiled back at him. "Having fun?" "Are you kidding? I'm on a sailboat with my family in the middle of the Atlantic, with a helicopter only hovering over us occasionally. Of course I'm having fun," he said, grinning. She tried to smile back, but he was able to read through her hesitance. "What's wrong?" he asked. "Connor," she started, and stopped once the kids came back upstairs with Quigley. Realizing the cause for her delay, he said, "Hey guys, want to climb up on the bow and sit on the deck up there? The view is great." The suggestion was irresistible, and the kids scrambled up forward of the cabin. "Be careful," Kerry ordered. "Stay away from the rails, understand?" She let a moment go by, and kept her eye on the kids as she continued. "There are a lot of unanswered questions about this case." He nodded and let the silence linger for a moment. "I know how you hate unanswered questions," Connor started. "But can't you just be happy it's over?" "That's just it. I'm not sure it is. There are several indications that our choices may have been compromised, Connor. And something Smith said to me." He stared at her, his forehead crinkled in concern. "She said that she led me to her. That she dropped clues on purpose. The only reason she could possibly have for doing that would be that so that I would come and kill her. And given her last words, that there's always an escape, it tells me that this line of thought might actually be the correct one." "But what was she escaping from?" she asked aloud, thinking of the choice machines and DNA vials she had seen. That base could have been built for a purpose other than weapons manufacturing and drug trafficking, and Kerry realized that Smith could have been a pawn in a much larger plan. "What does it matter?" Connor asked. "She's gone. What makes you think this is still going on?" She couldn't tell him about the Opleys. She couldn't give him those details about the warehouse rental agency and how Smith was connected, or details regarding the Navy's complete lack of response to her follow-up inquiries about her unanswered questions. They had sent her a memo stating that her inquiries would not be considered due to her lack of security clearance. An inquiry with the CIA produced similar results. "There are indications that this goes further than Smith," she said simply, and looked at him. "We have a choice, Connor. We can pursue this, or we can let it go, and live our lives, and pretend that there are no concerns." "What's the worst possible outcome that would occur if we ignore it?" She paused. "Countless civilians' choice information could be compromised. Some corruption within the law enforcement and military organizations could exist. The Diablo gang might have infiltrated the organizations that are supposed to keep us safe, and national security might be compromised." He nodded. "Okay, then do you really have a choice?" She looked down, and then back up at him. "You always have a choice," she echoed Smith's words, and then she touched his face gently. They were silent for a while. Connor, deciding that Kerry wasn't going to decide right now, changed the subject. "So I was thinking, dinner tonight," he said. "Ribs and a loaded baked potato? Sound good?" "I'll order it when we get back. I think I'll have a steak," she said, content to change the subject. "You've had a steak for the last 4 nights," he reminded her playfully. "And I'll have a steak for the 5th night," she insisted. "Hey, it's your vacation too," Connor said with a smile. "Lord knows you deserve it." "We all deserve it," Kerry told him. She looked up at the sky, slipping her sunglasses over her blue eyes. "Can I drive, Mum?" Patrick yelled from the bow. "You remember what I showed you?" she asked him carefully, knowing that there weren't many ways he could screw this up. The computer would keep them safe. "Uh-huh," he said eagerly. I'll help, Aiden volunteered. Go ahead, she said, waving them on. Yay! They screamed and ran over to the wheel. Where are we going, Captain? Patrick asked dutifully. Kerry chuckled and looked at Connor. She couldn't resist. Second star to the right? He smiled. And straight on till morning. Epilogue. Don't touch that, it's not ready yet. Kathleen swatted Seamus's hand away from the pot of potatoes she was cooking. Go away! Get out of my kitchen! Neil walked by and swiped a potato when she wasn't looking, and Seamus gave him a high five. You two double-teamed me, Kathleen accused. She turned to Seamus and pointed a wooden spoon at him. He gets this from you. Neil was about to respond when his cell phone vibrated in his pocket. He extracted it and heard his parents taking friendly jabs at one another as he walked out of Kerry's kitchen. This is Neil, he answered. These calls came with no CID and no video option. He had to hold the phone to his ear. I wanted to personally congratulate you on a successful operation, a female voice told him. You're welcome. What's the verdict? You were right. All preliminary results indicate that she'll take the subsequent bait. Then I was right. Yes, the female voice admitted. You were right. You're needed in Colorado in 2 days to present your 5-year projections. That's acceptable, Neil answered. There was a pause. What are your 5-year projections? The woman pressed. I'll give you the details in Colorado, but I think you'll find that we don't need 5-year projections. This can move in about 3. Another pause. That is excellent news. My calculations were right about this op. I'm going to order we move on our next target, he said. I'd give it a little under a year, but we'll see what everyone else thinks. Reasonable. We'll speak soon, Neil. In 2 days. He hung up the phone. Neil? Seamus asked from the doorframe that led to the kitchen. Everything okay? Fine, Dad, Neil said with a smile. Just business. Seamus nodded and returned to the kitchen. Neil's smile faltered for just a moment as his eyes fell on a family picture of Kerry, Connor, and their 2 young children. Just business, he whispered. This concludes Either Or. The Not So Distant Future series continues with Book 2, If Then. Thanks for listening.